Christy Ennis had always wanted to be a Marine. I guess it was to be expected. Her father was a career Marine. Her mom enlisted in the Marine Corps when Christy was 4. She got to watch her mom graduate from boot camp. It wasn't that she, wasn't a normal little girl or anything. She had Barbie dolls, but she dressed them in fatigues and Marine dress blues. So it wasn't a great deal of surprise when she graduated from high school. She spent the next year taking a few college classes and whatnot, and came home and told Mom and Dad that she was going to enlist in the Marines. She promised Dad that she would take a nice, safe desk job, and then the recruiter spilled the beans on the day she left for basic training that she had signed up for helicopters. On June 23rd, 2012, Christy was finishing up her first 4-year commitment in the Marines. And she was also just finishing up her her second deployment to Afghanistan. She was the tail gunner on a CH-53 Sikorsky helicopter when the helicopter was hit by enemy fire. The nose went straight up, the tail went straight down, and it came straight down. As she descended, she thought, I'm going to die. When she came to, she couldn't breathe because of the blood in her mouth and lungs, and she blacked out. When she came to a second time, a paramedic was standing over her and directing her, stay awake, stay awake. And she realized that her teeth were virtually gone, as was most of her jaw. Her spine was broken in multiple places. Her left leg was useless. She had her first operation right there in Afghanistan. She had ensuing operations in Germany, then back in the United States. The physical side of it was only part of what Christy had to endure. She also suffered a traumatic brain injury, and words would escape her at the most inopportune time. She couldn't contain a continual thought pattern. She had a very difficult time speaking. Life was very difficult for her. But Christy was determined to become a Marine, to be a fighting Marine again. And she went through rehab, excruciating pain, particularly in her leg and everything else. And she worked, and she worked so diligently, so hard to get back. But after a year, she realized that she was never going to be on a battlefield again. She would never be able to fulfill that dream of being of service in the service. And it was at that time, June 23rd, 2013, 1 year after her first alive date, that she attempted suicide. She had no purpose. I haven't moved.
And I did turn that off and you just do it again.
Anyway, can we turn down the gain or whatever that is? I don't know.
Well, that's a little bit better. You can step like half a step.
Put your left arm up.
There you go.
My left?
Step back.
Yeah, your left.
Your other left.
Now this is an important story.
Keep going.
The key to this story is that Christy didn't give up. She never quit. After that attempted suicide, she realized that she could still be a warrior. Maybe not in the same sense, but she could still be a warrior. She could still stay in there and fight. She was able to start the Christie Foundation. She committed herself to climbing the tallest mountain in each one of the 7 continents. She received an invitation to snowboard, and she thought, snowboard? I couldn't possibly do that. Just even to stand was excruciating. But they fitted her with a boot. She gave it a try, and as she slid down that slope for the very first time, she could feel the adrenaline rush. She could feel the wind on her cheeks. And she felt alive again for the first time. She knew that she could do it. Today, she heads the foundation. She's an active snowboarder. And she has changed her life. Well, good morning. Thank you all for coming out today. I think most people are already at the Valley of the Moon Park preparing for the picnic. For those of you who are going to go to the picnic today, I promise you that we will have joy. What was it, a month or so ago, when I confessed to everyone that I had denied myself the pleasure of having a new dog because I was afraid of the pain. I still remembered losing Jake and Allie. And so we went those 5 years without a dog. And so last Wednesday noon, we picked up little Joy. It's a little golden retriever puppy. So now we have Grace and Joy. We grandparents to Grace, so now we can do everything with Grace and Joy. Thank you for coming out today. We know that behind those clouds the sun is shining, and when we gather for the picnic, it will be there. The title of my talk today is Who's Kidding Whom? And I'm going to talk about how in our philosophy we're always positive. And some people have misunderstood that. My 3 major points is: 1, we live in a world of cause and effect. Number 2, we turn entirely away from conditions. And number 3, we do not pretend that the events in our lives and in the lives of those around us are not happening. First of all, we live in a world of cause and effect. Now, I could do a whole month of talks on cause and effect, and I may do that. But for today's purposes, let's just know that everything that we do is based on a cause and an effect. We are limited by nothing but our own belief. We are limited by nothing. I believe that it was Henry Ford, at least it was a Henry Ford, that said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And that's absolutely true. Ernest Holmes said much the same kind of a thing. We are not limited by actual boundaries, but by false ideas about life and by a failure to recognize that we are dealing with the infinite. Limitation is an experience of the race, the human race, but it is not the fault of God. It is the fault of man's perception. And to prove that this is so, let any man break the bonds of this false sense of life, and he at once begins to express less and less limitation. When we realize that the indwelling God is for us and not judging us and not beating us up, we realize that we have that power within us at every moment. Kirstie never gave up. She never quit. She recognized that she was greater than the conditions. She was greater than the things that happened. Now, she didn't deny that her leg was gone. She didn't deny all of the things that had happened to her. But what she was able to do is rise above those. For you see, it was another year later, after 39 surgeries in Europe and in the United States, that they told her that they were going to have to take her left leg. And she told them, wait till the fall. I'm committed this summer to a 1,000-mile trek across England, Wales, and Scotland. Now, Ann and I walked for 510 miles. She walked for 1,000 miles with a leg that was in excruciating pain. She walked part of it with Prince Henry. And when he complained about his knees being sore, she was standing there and she said, "You got to be kidding." But she recognized him as a fellow warrior. Part of her plan and what she's doing to raise awareness for wounded veterans, wounded servicemen, is to climb these 7 peaks. 1 month ago, she was on Denali. She reached the 14-2 high camp, and they made 3 attempts to summit. And every time, Denali's winds kept them from going up. She didn't summit. But what she did was amazing. And I can't say it all here, but her Facebook post said it all. And she said, yeah, we feel bad that we didn't summit. But what we did was try. What we did was get up there. And here's this lady who'd lost her left leg climbing Denali, along with another veteran, to raise awareness to what veterans can do. She was able to see past those effects and to see the spiritual truth. Ernest Holmes, once again. We are dealing with an impersonal principle. It will operate for one just as quickly as for another, because it is law. Dare to speak and to know that what you speak is the law unto the things spoken, regardless of what conditions exist. One, alone, in consciousness with the infinite, constitutes a complete majority. Point 2, we turn it entirely away from conditions. There's a story that, I don't know if it's true or not, sounds reasonable. Ernest Holmes was teaching a group of people, and he instructed them, if you walk into a hospital room and you see a sick person, turn around and walk right back out. The idea being that we don't see the illness. We don't see imperfection. We only see the perfect human being. And I think that it's this concept that was so misconstrued. I think Holmes said it better. This is in the Science of Mind text. The one practicing, which is all of us, we all continually practice these principles, whether we know it or not. The one practicing must be able to look a fact in the face and know that all manifestations are effects and can be changed by changing the mental cause. He must be able to look at the sick man who has come to him for help and to know that only perfection stands before him. He must see beyond the appearance to that which is basically perfect. A man by the name of Emmett Diggs was sitting in his car in his driveway, and he felt like just pounding the steering wheel in frustration, in loss, in remorse, in regret. He had just lost the second of the 3 great loves of his life. His 3 great loves were, first of all, boxing, second, his wife, Patty, and third was tennis. And he had a voicemail greeting, on his phone, and it said, "This is Emmett Diggs, retired minister, active tennis player, happy man." And he said, "I'm going to have to change that." Because what he'd had to just do is to resign from the tennis club that he belonged to. The ravages of Parkinson's disease had finally caught up with him, and he could no longer compete and play tennis. He could hardly stand. His first loss had been boxing. When he was a young man, he was in his 20s. His dad had been an amateur boxer and had even built a ring in their barn, and they made this combination of chicken feed and sand, and he used those as punching bags, and he practiced in his barn. He was a natural boxer. He was quite good. He never lost a bout. He won the Virginia welterweight championship in 1961. He was just a natural. He was in ministerial school at the time, and he was doing his internships. And one day the dean of the school called him in and said, Emmett, I'm sorry, but he said, I've had several complaints from your congregation. They don't think it's right that you should be fighting and be a minister. The idea of fighting kind of goes against our principles. And he said, you're going to have to choose. You're going to have to make up your mind whether you want to fight or whether you want to be a preacher. Well, fighting was his love. Boxing was. He loved to box. He loved even getting in a corner because he liked to fight his way back out. He didn't care if he got hit or not. He loved to box. And so it was really hard for him to give that up. But he knew that preaching was his calling. He knew that was what he was on the planet here to do. And so he gave up boxing. And now he'd had to give up tennis. And he thought, well, at least I can garden. And one day he was in the garden and doing his things in the garden, and he was on his knees, and he went to get up, and he couldn't get up. And Patty had gone to the store, and there he was, stuck in the yard and couldn't get up. The neighbors had to come and help him up. And he thought, well, I guess I'll just have to sit on the porch now and watch the birds come to the bird feeder. But a day or two later, Patty came up to him, and she had an article in the newspaper, and it was about this club that got together of Parkinson's people, and it helped them with their physical strength and what they were doing, and it was called Rock Steady Boxing. And these people were using boxing to help deal with Parkinson's. And he thought, well, maybe I could. Now, no, I can't even stand. But Patty convinced him that he should go. And he went to the first orientation meeting of the Rock Steady Boxing. And he went in, and the guy, big guy was, Joe said, well, let's see what you got. Well, I'm not even sure I can stand. I don't care. Lace him up. They put him in front of the big bag. And he said, let's see, jab. And he jabbed. And with that first jab, he felt more alive than he had felt in over 50 years. Jab, jab, cross. And Joe, the guy behind the bag, said, whoa, we got one here. At their first meeting, he was able to do all of the stuff that he could do. And they have a really rigorous program of, they start with stretching, and then they have strength building. It's got pictures of him in there doing push-ups and all types of things to build strength. And then finally they did a lot of shadow boxing. They don't ever compete. It's non-contact. But they use all of the principles of boxing, and it helped him build his strength. And so this thing that he had given up 50 years earlier was now saving him. And at 75 years old, he's active in Rock Steady Boxing. And he said, I am going to have to change that voicemail. And now his voicemail greeting is, hi. This is Emmett Diggs, boxer, retired minister, happy man. Point number 3, we do not pretend that the events in our lives and the lives of those around us are not happening. Sometimes I wonder if the movie The Secret was a mistake. I don't know if it really helped our movement or set us back. And I say that it exposed our way of thinking to hundreds of thousands of people. And if that's all you ever got, that little snippet of our philosophy as portrayed in the Secret, you could very easily coming away with the idea that we're a bunch of Pollyannas and everything is wonderful all the time and we can manifest anything we want to manifest and life is good all the time. And how often do we say that? Life is good all the time. And it's not. We do not ignore conditions. We see beyond them. Can we talk to God? Ernest says, so when we say that our body is a spiritual body, we are not saying that we have no eyes, or we have no feet, or we have no stomach. These things are all included in the spiritual system. God's world is not a world of illusion, but of realities. The illusion is not in the thing, but in the way we look at it and think about it. Everything is as real as it is supposed to be. We don't deny the conditions, we see beyond them. We don't deny Parkinson's disease, but we do see that we can have a different way of approaching it. We have a different way of dealing with it. We have a different way of being in the world. And sometimes we can take the help and we can step back and get back into boxing. Sometimes we can go out and climb the 7 peaks of one of the continents. Sometimes we may not make the top of Denali, but I'll tell you what, I'll bet you Christy Enos eventually makes it. Maybe not this year. It won't be in 19 because she's going to do Everest. But I'll bet you that Kirsty makes Denali. She summits. But we do not deny the effects. It would be akin to putting a smiley face in front of the gas gauge in your car because you don't want to look down and see that you're running out of gas. And that is not what we do. We pay attention to the gas gauge, but we simply know that we're going to be okay. We open ourselves up to an infinite way of getting more petroleum. We may be driving down the road and the next corner is a gas station. We may be out in the middle of nowhere and look down and see we're getting low and we affirm that we're going to be very conservative with our gas and make it to the next little town. We may be out there in the middle of nowhere wondering what it is and all of a sudden there's a man standing at the side of the road with 2 5-gallon cans of gas hitchhiking. One for his car because he ran out of gas. And one for you. We don't want to put constraints on what it is, but we don't ignore the condition. And we don't put a smiley face over our gas gauge. That would be what we know as a spiritual bypass. So I had a definition, a spiritual bypass. The tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. And we see that in this movement. We do. We see people putting Band-Aids on really big sores. This term was introduced in the early 1980s by John Wellwood, who was a Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist. And it's not about spiritual bypass. It's about recognizing facts, accepting them for what they are, and knowing that we don't have to live within the constraints, that there are other ways for us to be in the world. We can climb mountains with one leg. We can go back to boxing. We don't have to stay at the bottom. We can sometimes go to the top. The conclusion, what I want everybody to take away today. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. However trite it is the truth of our experience here on earth. We cannot separate our human experience from the truth of our divinity. any more than we can separate our divinity from our humanness. All that we are, both human and divine, make up our reality. One does not erase the other. Perfect God, perfect man. We cannot separate one from the other. And I'll leave you with one last Ernest Holmes quote. Man is fundamentally perfect. This is our whole premise. Perfect God, perfect man, perfect being. This is the whole basis of the argument. And it is with our awareness of that perfection which is inherent within each and every one of us that I invite my colleagues to join me, the practitioners, to join me in, yes, Tony, you're supposed to stand now, to join me in knowing the truth. That there is indeed a power in the universe. One power, one presence, one life. And that life is the life of God. That is the life of each and every one of us. That is a shared life. And that life is perfect. So I speak my word now for all those people who are facing the appearance of lack and limitation. We simply know that beyond this appearance, that we live in an abundant universe. A universe that has more than we can even imagine. And so for those who are experiencing lack, we just step up and accept. We accept goodness. We accept prosperity. We accept security. For those who are experiencing health challenges, we just simply recognize that within each of us there is a blueprint that is perfect. That infinite divine creative force which made each and every one of us made us perfect. Made us in a way that is absolutely perfect, and it's that perfection that we embrace. We do not deny Parkinson's. We do not deny amputation. We embrace the truth, and we embrace that there's a better way to live than in sorrow and misery. Speak my word for those now who are experiencing separation in relationships, separation from God, separation from one another, whether it be a romantic relationship, a family relationship. It makes no difference, because it is all the activity of God. Each and every one of us as divine expressions of the one coming together, and that is perfect. And so we just accept the perfect relationship for each and every one of us. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for the power and the presence of God which is within each and every one of us. We give thanks for the perfect life that is expressing here and now. And so it only behooves us now to step away and to allow the divine to operate through it as us. So we let it go, we let it be, and so it is.